friends, today it's time to talk about my top books of 2019. So I'm very excited to sit down today and talk to you about my top 10 books of the last year. It was a year indeed. I think that, even though obviously I did end up reading 100 books up until August when I stopped reading. And so I definitely had a lot of choice. I still think it just was not my best reading year, even though I read so much. I just really think that I didn't focus enough on genres that I really love. And, I obviously had a lot of fun reading adult romance books this year, and that is definitely represented in my list as well. But I think at the end of the day, I really didn't put a big enough emphasis on reading fantasy in 2019, and I just feel a little bit weird about my list because usually it has more fantasy, and I just feel different about fantasy. It is hard for me to describe. I've obviously become someone who reads a very equal amount of contemporary versus fantasy novels, but there is still always a certain way that I feel about fantasy that I just will never feel about contemporary. And I always say this, contemporary helps me to relate and fantasy helps me to escape. And the escapism just hits different. But I'm still very excited, obviously, to talk about this list. I just had a harder time, first of all, doing this list for 2019. And then second of all, I just don't feel as strongly about my top 3 than I usually do. One big thing where you can tell that is that usually you would have at least my top 3 be favorites of all time as well. And then last year was the first time where only my number 1, Ink Mistress, ended up being a favorite of all time for me as well. In 2019, I didn't read a single book that ended up being a new favorite of all time for me. And I know that I'm very, very exclusive with that. I literally have, I read 600 books in my life and I have 26 favorites of all time. And a lot of those are, from it's like the whole Graceling Realm trilogy and it's the whole Hunger Games trilogy. So I understand that I'm being very exclusive with my favorites of all time, but that's just how it is. And so when a top books of the year list doesn't even have a favorite of all time, I'm kind of just like, man, what happened? But still, I loved all of these books and I cannot wait to talk about them, even though I feel like it's all been forever ago. So let's see what I even remember about them. But let's just get started. My number 10 this year is Words in Deep Blue by Kath Crowley. This is a YA contemporary that really surprised me. I definitely didn't think that I would fall in love with this as much as I did, but it just had a lot of really interesting themes, and then just the kind of idea of it was really nice because it took place, obviously not only, but it very much took place in this bookstore that has this kind of like library where you can put letters into the books and you can, just write stuff in the margins as well. And so some people like exchange letters through this library, and some people, just like read a book together and just write stuff in the margins and kind of communicate like that. And I loved that concept so very much, and I think that it worked incredibly well for this book. I really enjoyed the friendships, I really enjoyed the romantic relationships, and just in general all the characters and their different relationships. This is like a super short book, so not all the relationships were super fleshed out, but what we did get was really beautiful, and the characters are all incredibly flawed, but like in the best way possible, in a way that I exactly want to read, especially in a YA contemporary. It had a beautiful atmosphere. I think that this is an incredibly underrated book that I would absolutely recommend. My number 9 is The Governess Game by Tessa Dare. This is the second book in the Girl Meets Duke series and the sequel to The Duchess Deal. And I already really love The Duchess Deal, but The Governess Game just, oh my god, it pulled at all my heartstrings. I never ended up writing a review for this. I think I was just like too emotional about it. This has happened to me quite a lot. I've had a really hard time actually writing reviews for the adult romances that I read, because the ones that I really loved, I was just in my feels about it and just did not know how to express in words what I was actually feeling. But I just remember that I really loved the main character. I really loved her development, and I really loved her relationship with the love interest. His character development was really interesting as well, and he definitely had this just huge development as a character, and it was kind of led on by the main character, the female main character, but it still was a change that he made all on his own, and a change that he was like willing to go through for this person, but not, you know, forced by this other person, if that makes sense. So I really, really enjoyed that. And I do really love historical settings, especially when it's romance. That's why I already loved The Duchess Deal. But The Governess Game, with its main character and with its love interest and with their development, just really, really spoke to me on a level that the first book didn't really do. So I think if you love historical romance, this is something that you should absolutely check out. I still need to read the third book. Oh God. But I truly love this so much, and I remember bawling my eyes out at the end of it. On number 8, we have The Miseducation of Cameron Post by Emily M. Danforth. This is definitely one of the most impactful and impressive novels that I have read this year, and I'm just so glad that I finally did read it, because this is technically it's a YA historical fiction because it does, you know, take place in the 90s, but I know a lot of people kind of put it as a contemporary, and it definitely makes sense just for its themes. But at the end of the day, I definitely think you could also, you know, classify it as a historical fiction. And it is about a queer girl at a conversion camp and how she got there, just her whole story. And it is one of those books that's a very quiet book, but it's so loud at the same time. Like, the writing feels very quiet, and it's not a lot of like super descriptive things or like purple prose or anything like that, but the message is still yelled at you in such a loud way. And I just think that this is a book that everybody should read. I think that there is a reason why this book, you know, got a lot of buzz. I think that there is a reason why this book received prizes. And I just think that, especially if you are into queer literature, I think that this is one of the absolute must reads when it comes to that. It is so powerful. It is so very powerful. It really had a deep impact on me that I think I still haven't really processed in some way. It's one of those books where I blatantly said I can't write a review for this because I just don't know how to express what this book made me feel, but I can only tell you that it is just an absolutely wonderful book that is definitely heavy to read in parts. It is obviously a book, you know, that does deal with conversion therapy, that does deal with like homophobia and stuff like that, so definitely be aware of that going into it. It is a book that's not an easy read, but it also has a lot of beautiful parts. It's just one of those books that's like, it's sad and it makes you feel so many things. It definitely makes you feel upset, and it's about hurting and grieving, but it does all of that in a beautifully impactful way. And again, I can only highly recommend this one. Honestly, I think out of this whole list, this is the number one book I would tell people to read. Like, if you are taking one book away from this, if you are picking one book from this whole list where you're like, that's the one I'm going to read, it is The Miseducation of Cameron Post. And I know it sounds weird because it is my number 8, but I think this is the one that's going to have the most impact on people. My number 7 is The Lost Coast by Amy Rose Capetta. Another absolutely beautifully written book, and another one that I think is highly underrated. I don't know where people missed the hype train for The Lost Coast, but I just need y'all to get on it because this book is so beautiful. It is so unapologetically queer. It is maybe, I think The Bridesheaders could be up there, but it is maybe the most unapologetically queer book that I have ever read, and it just does the unapologetic queerness in the most beautiful way. It's about this group of girls, and they are all friends, but they are all so like unapologetically queer with each other as well. So it's not just about, you know, just being you and putting yourself out there as you are and being unapologetic about that, but it's also just about this group of girls who are very open with their feelings, with their wants, and all of these things towards each other as well, and like just not being afraid to show affection towards each other as well. It's so powerfully done, and it definitely has a found family theme. Like, these girls, they are a family, and they are part of each other's lives in a way that just definitely exceeds just friendship. I also loved the whole atmosphere and just the way the book was written, not just the style of writing, but also, we got like different point of views. And I have come to really love when books that are kind of a little bit like whimsical, when they have point of views that are like the woods, or just things that you wouldn't really expect to have a POV, or outside perspectives that you don't think are relevant, but in the overall story are like super relevant and do like make a big point. I have absolutely come to love that, and this is one of those books that has that as well, and it made for an atmosphere that was so easy to grasp and so wonderful to read. I think this is one of those books where the atmosphere of the story very much feels almost like a character, if that makes sense. I never know how to describe this, but since Victoria Schwab once kind of mentioned that she writes her world building almost as a character, I keep thinking about how in some books, certain things that are not characters stand out as characters. And I think that in The Lost Coast, the atmosphere is one of those things that stands out more as a character because it's so there, like it's so easy to grasp and you just feel so immersed in this world. It is a witchy book, so it does have, some like magical elements, so it's not like a clean contemporary. So if that's not for you, because it definitely is, how do I say this, like a little bit on the weird side. I don't know how to explain it, but I definitely think like you kind of have to be open for this just being a little bit weird and having those witchy elements. But if you are open for that, and if you love those kinds of things, and if you love unapologetically queer books, another huge recommendation from me. My number 6 is The Nowhere Girls by Amy Reed, another incredibly impactful read that I think I will also have a really hard time describing because it's just so powerful and so emotional, and it is definitely an upsetting read. Definitely check out trigger warnings for this one, but if you can handle it, this is definitely one of the best books I have ever read about, rape culture, about toxic masculinity. It's just so fucking good. And it has so many layers to it as well. It's one of those books where this is definitely the overarching theme of the book, but then you also have a really wonderful female friendship and you have great romantic storylines. And I just love when books that deal with tough topics like this still take time to have storylines like that and to really build those storylines, but at the same time never lose the powerful impact of this message and this theme that you're trying to get across. And The Nowhere Girls 100% is that kind of book for me, where I still very much fondly think of the friendships and the romantic relationships and just these characters in general, and them just figuring out their identities as well and who they are and who they want to be, but then also think about the impact that this theme has. It is also one of those books that has this interesting style of writing. We have the 3 main characters who all have point of views, but then sometimes it's the 3 of them together, and then sometimes we have voices from all of the people, kind of. It's hard to describe, but it's just another one of those books that takes POVs into account that you wouldn't normally expect and that you won't find in every book, but it works perfectly, absolutely perfectly for this one, and just manages to give you a perspective on so many people's identities. It just gives a voice to marginalized identities that are not the identities of the main characters. And even though it might just be like a small section or a small sentence, it is there. And I think that's super, super important, and just shows me that, Amy Reed really wanted to make sure to include those voices as well. I just think it's incredibly well done. Again, it's an impactful and important and powerful topic, but it's also really beautiful. Made me bawl my eyes out. I think when did I read this? This was in some readathon. The Buzzwordathon. I do have a vlog where I bawl my eyes out about this one. So, I'm going to leave, in general, I'm obviously going to leave links to reviews if I have them down below, and anything related, as in this case, a vlog, I will leave that in the description down below if you're interested, but it is definitely a very emotional read. My number 5 is The Princess and the Fangirl by Ashley Poston. Honestly, maybe the book that almost like stands out the most on this whole list, because The Princess and the Fangirl is just a fluffy, fun read. It's not one that has like a deep, huge impact or anything like that. And I mean, I have some more adult romances to come, but still, this book definitely stands out to me in a way where I guess I didn't expect for this to end up being on my favorites list. But I just love this world. I have already fallen in love with this world around this, you know, fictional TV show in Geekerella, and I just loved being at this fictional con, and I just really, you know, apart from really liking the characters and the storyline in Geekerella, I just really fell in love with just this world, and I really fell in love with, you know, this fictional show, which I still can't believe that Ashley Poston was able to make me feel like that about a show that doesn't even fucking exist, but here we are. And so diving into The Princess and the Fangirl, I went into it with a lot of love for this world already. I went into it with a lot of love for this show and for this world of this show as well, and just almost with this nostalgic sense for all of this. And so coming back to ExcelsiCon, it truly felt like coming home for me, which I can't even I don't know, it's so ridiculous what a huge impact that book had on me, when it's not a book that I would describe as impactful in a general sense, but it had this huge impact on me. It made me so emotional, it made me feel so many things. On top of that, we have two really, really wonderful romances. One of them is a female-female romance, and I think that both romances were done beautifully. I will say there's definitely some sus things in there. I'm gonna leave my review down below, and I definitely pointed out some things that I know there are gonna be readers who will not appreciate it. Like, there's not downright problematic things, but it's just that there's things in there where I was like, oh, I know other people are not gonna like that. And I respect that, but I can only say that this book was just a wonderful, beautiful, happy, fluffy journey for me from the first to the last page. It made me cry. Literally, I just sat there reading this book, screaming out loud, look to the stars, aim, ignite. I am a huge fucking Starfield stan, even though the show doesn't exist and I've never seen a single episode of it, but I just love this world with my entire heart. I love this book with my entire heart. I love these characters with my entire heart, and I just love the way that Ashley Poston writes fandom, and I cannot wait for the fucking sequel. There's gonna be a sequel. There's gonna be more. I can't wait. I just love this world so much. All the characters, both in Starfield and in this book, they are my babies, and I'm just thinking about this book just makes me happy. So very happy. Then my number 4 is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, which, holy crap, I can't even believe it. I just loved this book with every fiber of my being, and I like, do you see my face right now? I'm just smiling because just thinking about this book and just thinking about the wonderful romance in it just brings me a happiness that is not describable. I just absolutely loved every single minute of this book, and every single minute of this book just made me happy and made me feel emotional, and I was just in it for the whole ride this whole time. Again, every fucking minute. I listened to this on audio, and it was a good audiobook. But I just truly felt so many things while reading this, and I was just so invested with these characters. I was so invested with their character development. Both of them had amazing character development. But at the end of the day, it's the romance. It's the romance that got me 100%. It's just wonderful. I don't know what else to say. I feel like everybody who is into adult romance has read this book at this point, and I think you either love it or you hate it. I loved it. I loved it very much. I really want to reread it, actually, and I'm in my feels just thinking about it. We're continuing with the theme. My number 3 is Duke by Default by Alyssa Cole. Blows my mind as well, but basically the exact same as with The Kiss Quotient. I was so emotionally invested. I love the characters. I love the romance. It just makes me so happy. And with this one, it was especially fun because this is the companion sequel to, oh god, what's A Princess in Theory, which I really loved. and had a lot of fun reading. And I think that A Princess in Theory was one of the first adult romances that I read this year. So, you know, I was like surprised by how much I loved that. And then I picked up A Duke by Default and I was just blown away. I genuinely think that I didn't think a adult romance book could have that huge of an impact on me. And I think that I wasn't expecting for an adult romance to make me cry like A Duke by Default did. Oh man, I learned reading that book. Like, I was again so emotionally invested. It's another book where both of the characters have this huge character development that was incredibly well done. It's just an incredibly well written romance, incredibly well written sex scenes. Like, damn, that's up there for sure. And I love the setting as well. It takes place in Scotland, and you know, it is a kind of like a you know, the love interest is a swordsmith. So I love that as well. But yeah, it's beautiful. And again, I feel like I lost that point earlier. But the fact that I read A Princess in Theory before this, so I already knew the main character a little bit. And then we had the characters from the first book kind of, you know, show up in the second one as well. I think that is always something that adds a layer for me, just with like emotional impact and emotional involvement that, you know, definitely helps a book with how much I love it. And yeah, just love this a lot. Okay, my number 2 is actually a whole ass series, and I've definitely put series on my list before. I've definitely put duologies on my list before, but I don't think I have ever put a 4-book series on a whole ass rank, just all together. Usually, if it's a trilogy, I will have different feelings. So one of the books will rank on number 8. One of the books will rank on number 2. I think that this series is perfect through and through. And I think that all 4 of these books just work together perfectly. And I think that all 4 of these books each have something that makes them unique and special. But at the end of the day, all 4 of them together are what makes this perfect. And all 4 of them together are just all so good in different ways, but they're all so good. There's no way for me to rank these on different rankings in this ranking. How many times can I say ranking? So I'm just putting all of them together, and that is the whole Charlotte Holmes series by Brittany Cavallaro. I still have not processed the way I feel about these books. They really caught me completely off guard. I got A Study in Charlotte, the first book in the series, from Melanie for Christmas last year. Well, now it's last year, 2018. I got it for Christmas 2018, and she read it for this classics project that she did, where she read A Study in Scarlet. Yeah, that's the first Sherlock Holmes book. She read A Study in Scarlet, and then she read this retelling after. And so I was like, yeah, of course, you gifted this to me, so obviously I will read it when you read it as well. So we buddy read this together, and I was just so surprised by how much I love this. I really was not expecting to love this as much as I did. I was not expecting for this to be as dark as it was, to have such like dark themes in there. I thought this was going to be like a fluffy, funny mystery. And does it have its funny moments? Oh, absolutely. But it's more like these sarcastic moments and not like downright laugh out loud moments. It is very dark. It has very intense, tough topics in there that I really, really wasn't expecting. But I absolutely fell in love with this. This series just has 2 of the like most prominent main characters that I have ever read about. Like, both of them just have such a strong personality that stands out so much, and the both of them together and their relationship, that's truly what makes this series perfect for me. That is where, first of all, I entirely fell in love with this series, just the dynamic between those 2. But then also that's just where, for me, the strength of this series really is. It's not the mystery or these like darker themes about it or anything like that. It's truly those 2 main characters, how different they are, but how perfect they are together, and how interesting they are together, and just their whole relationship, and then kind of just, you know, going up and down with their relationship in these 4 books. I just love these two. Like, those 2 main characters, they are my fucking babies, and I love them. And again, I just think that this is an incredibly underrated series. I think that a lot of people are not expecting what you get from this series. If you love character-driven YA novels, you absolutely need to pick this up. You might be thinking, oh, I'm usually not into mysteries. Doesn't fucking matter. I'm not either. It's such a... I don't want to say it's like, you know, not the main focus, because obviously that's still what is kind of the storyline throughout those books, but it's so character driven, and it's so driven on both of these characters, on their personalities, on their development, and on their relationship with each other. It's just worth it for that alone to read the series. And I swear to God, if you fall in love with these characters in the first book, you will love all 3 other books as well. It's just perfect. I love this series. I love this series so fucking much. And finally, we have my number 1 of 2019, which it was almost this series, but then I ended up just thinking of the book that I knew had to make my list, even though, I'm gonna say it quite honestly, I technically did not read this book for the first time in 2019. I read it in December 2018 and didn't put it on my favorites of 2018 because at that point my list was basically done, and I think I was just overwhelmed with how much I love this book that I didn't even really think to actually put it on that list. It was just so late in the year, and I've never really had that where a book that I read so late in the year, you know, just still made me feel like that in a way where I wanted to put it on my list. So I just didn't even think about it. But then I kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking, why didn't I put this on my top books of 2018? And then I reread it in January 2019, and then I was like, maybe I'll just put this on my top books of 2019. And I'm telling you, with the reading year that I had, this is the clear favorite book that I have read. Even though I usually don't. Again, usually I don't put rereads on here, and I wouldn't put this on here if it was a reread from like 3 years ago. But it is a reread of a book that only came out in January 2019. And at this point, you might have guessed it, I don't really know, but it is The Wicked King by Holly Black. There's really, truly no other way. Like, I cannot put anything else on number 1 when The Wicked King exists. Like, there's no fucking way. I had the most emotions, I had the most feelings, the most attachment, the most involvement, everything with The Wicked King, more than I've had with any other book that I have read this year. And I don't think I would have put it on this list if I just read it in December last year, but the fact that it also only came out in January, and then I reread it in January as well, and this reread made me realize how much I love it again, and that I love it even more as well. There's no way. Like, I just feel the most about this book, more than I do, again, about any of these other books. And I do think that it comes down to it being a fantasy book. I'm gonna say that quite honestly. Hello, yes, we gotta switch to the fucking iPhone camera because my battery is fucked, my friends, and I just have no patience. I just want to finish this video, and I just want to talk and gush about The Wicked King. If you've made this far, you can probably live with the past couple of minutes being iPhone quality. What was I talking about? I just feel very strongly about The Wicked King, and I do think that it is because it is a fantasy book. That's what I was trying to say. I definitely think if this series was a fantasy series, like with these characters and that relationship, I think that I would have put this on my number 1 just with the way I feel about these characters. But The Wicked King, with its characters, with its main relationship, with its world building, with its storyline, it was just my favorite thing, and there's nothing that can live up to that. Even just thinking about the Undersea Kingdom makes me feel so many things. I love that world building. I love that whole storyline within this book. One of my favorite things, absolutely. And then obviously we do have, Jude, who is an amazing main character with an amazing character development. We have Cardan, who is an amazing character with an amazing character development. We have those two together and their relationship and how that is developing and evolving in this book, which is perfectly done. We have all these amazing side characters. We have all these amazing villains. It's just a perfect book through and through. And I say that as someone who really didn't love The Cruel Prince and who had a lot of conflicting feelings about The Cruel Prince, about that world building, because I'm usually not into fairy shit, about Jude as a main character, about Cardan and about their relationship. I had so many conflicting feelings, and the fact that The Wicked King was able to make me turn like 180 degrees about that whole book, I think that in and of itself says absolutely enough. I just love this book with every fiber of my being. I don't think that The Wicked King is ever going to be on my favorites of all time, but I definitely think that if I like the series as a whole more, like The Wicked King is by far my standout favorite in that trilogy. I think if I like the first and third book more, I definitely think that The Wicked King could be a favorite of all time. I definitely think that it's very much up there. It's very, very much up there, and I just think that it's an incredibly well-written book and an incredibly well-written everything. World, characters, relationship, friendship, family, it's all there and it's all good. And I am just in love with The Wicked King. Also, the fact that I buddy read this with Melanie and then my reread of The Wicked King was with Melanie, and those two are my top books of the year. I mean, I'm not even surprised. We love to see it. Anyway, those were my top books of 2019. I'm so glad that I finally got to film this video and talk about these books that I loved so very much. Again, in my dreams, this list would look a little different, but I still love these books so very much. I don't know why I did it like that. I love these books so very much, and I am just glad that I'm here and excited to talk about these, and I hope that at the end of 2020, I will have read enough books to actually do favorites of 2020. But who knows? Should I tell you a secret? If you have watched this far, my friends, I will tell you a secret. And that secret is that I have finished one book in 2020. And that book is going to make my favorites of the year list. Can we just talk about that? The impact of that one book I have read. The first book that I read in this fucking year, in this fucking decade, is a book that I loved so much that I'm already sure it is gonna make my favorites of the year, and it doesn't matter how many books I'm gonna read. I know it's gonna be on that list. And that is an impact. Oh, you know who I buddy read that book with? Melanie. All right. Okay. Anyway, told you that secret. Now you know, if you've made it this far. And yeah, that's it. That's it from me. Tell me about your favorite books of the year. Tell me, about the books that made you feel emotional, that just made you go through all the happy feelings and the sad feelings and all the feelings. I want to know. Let me know if you've read any of the books that are on my list and what you felt about them. And yeah, I make new videos, hopefully at least once a week. So click subscribe to never miss anything and hit the little bell so you get notified as well. And thank you so much for watching. I guess I'll see you soon. Bye.